It had no name, no signs, no end. It was supposed to be a dare, a stupid tradition in a town too small to offer any real excitement. Every year, seniors at the local high school would pick one student to walk the length of the tunnel near the edge of town. The one carved into the cliffside behind the old rusted rail yard. The tunnel that didn't appear on any maps. The tunnel that trains no longer passed through. No one had ever made it all the way through. Most turned back after a few minutes, said they heard things or saw things. But that was always part of the game. The point wasn't to finish it. It was to say you tried. And this year, they chose Eli. Eli didn't argue. He wasn't scared of the dark, and the stories didn't faze him. Whispers about missing people, about strange sounds, about things that moved in the walls. He assumed it was just meant to scare off kids like him. But when he stood at the entrance of the tunnel, flashlight in hand, something felt wrong. The mouth of it was far too round, too smooth. It looked like it had been melted open, not carved. Like something had burrowed out. And it was silent. Too silent. There was no wind, no bugs. Just a faint echo of dripping water from somewhere deep inside. The others stayed behind, as they always did, laughing, shouting encouragement, promising he only needed to walk 10 minutes in and 10 minutes back to prove he had done it. So Eli stepped in. The air changed immediately, cold, damp and thick like fog, but dry. His flashlight flickered, then steadied again. The beam of light cut a narrow path through the black, revealing old wooden support beams and glistening stone. The walls pulsed faintly with moisture, and the more he walked, the more they seemed to curve, subtly bending inward like the throat of a giant. The deeper Eli went, the less noise he heard. Not just from the others outside. Their voices had faded almost immediately, but also his own steps. They felt muffled, like the sound was being absorbed. And after 7 minutes, he stopped. Not because he was afraid, but because he heard something. A second set of footsteps. They were faint, distant and offbeat, coming from further ahead, echoing back toward him. So Eli called out. There was no answer, but the footsteps stopped. He thought about turning back, just for a second, but the tunnel was perfectly straight. He could see behind him, and there were no bends, no tricks. If someone had followed him in, he would see them. The tunnel behind him looked longer than he remembered, like it had stretched. He took another step forward. The walls began to change. At first it was subtle. The rock looked softer, darker. But after a while, Eli noticed patterns, folds, creases, veins. They weren't stone anymore. They looked like skin. He shined his light upward. The ceiling was pulsing, slowly, like it was breathing. Eli backed up, heart pounding, but the ground beneath him had changed too. It was no longer gravel. It was spongy, slick. He dropped the flashlight. The beam landed sideways, casting strange shadows across the tunnel. And that's when he saw it. On the wall there was a face. Not carved or painted. Grown. Twisted in agony. Its eyes were closed. Lips parted as if trying to scream. Another face was next to it. Barely formed. It looked like it was just a mouth, wide open in a soundless howl. Eli stumbled back, reaching for the flashlight. But the moment his fingers touched it, every light in the tunnel died. Pitch black. Then a sound. Not footsteps or whispers. Breathing. Right behind him. He ran. Or he thought he did. The floor pulsed beneath his feet. He reached for the tunnel wall and his fingers sank into it. There were more faces now. Hundreds or thousands. All frozen mid-scream. Some looked fresh. Some were so distorted they barely looked human. Eli moved faster, panic overwhelming him. But no matter how far he ran, the tunnel never ended. Worse, he started recognizing the faces. He saw his teacher, his neighbor, a girl from his class who had gone missing last year, and his mother. They were all part of the war. They were all watching him. The tunnel digested them. It growed them. And now it had Eli. His friends waited outside for an hour, then 2. There was no sign of Eli, no screams, no flashlight beam. Just silence. Eventually, someone worked up the courage to step inside. Just a few feet. Just enough to call Eli's name. But the tunnel was shorter now, and its walls were smoother, like it had been recently fed. Eli was never seen again, and the tunnel still waits, always hungry. It wasn't the darkness in the hallway that bothered her. It was how long it seemed to watch her back. Tess had lived in the farmhouse for just under a month. She inherited it from a great uncle she never met, buried 2 states over with no other family left behind. The house came with 10 acres of dry yellowed land, a windless sky, and silence so complete. It hurt her ears the first few nights. She worked remotely. No TV, no neighbors. Just the slow creak of the house settling at night. The wind tickling the roof tiles, and the occasional skitter of mice behind her walls. Or so she thought. Because after a while, Tess noticed something. The noises weren't random. They were rhythmic. Tess had never feared being alone before. She liked solitude. She liked control. But now, in the long quiet of the farmhouse, she found herself listening too carefully to the stillness. And in that stillness, the sounds started changing. It wasn't like scratching. It was a tapping sound. There were 2 taps, then 3, then a pause, and then 5. A pattern. Always at night. Always from the same wall. The one behind her bedroom. She knocked back once. It was a joke, an impulse. But the wall answered. Tess didn't sleep that night. In the morning, she told herself it was animals. Maybe the pipes. Maybe the old house was playing tricks on her. She peeled back a corner of the wallpaper. Just drywall beneath. There was nothing strange. But after a while, she noticed something else. The wallpaper wasn't nailed or glued. It was grown into the wall. Like it had roots. Tess tried to peel more, but the pattern began to flake off like skin, revealing not wood or plaster, but something fibrous underneath. It almost looked like... She didn't want to say it. She didn't even want to think it. But the next night, Tess heard the tapping again. This time it was way closer. It was coming from the wall just behind her bed. She sat up in the dark, listening. Tap, tap, tap. Then she heard something new. A voice. Not a whisper or a word, just a slow sound of breathing, pressed against the thin barrier between her and whatever was on the other side. She backed away from the wall, and the wallpaper began to ripple. In the morning, the wall was smooth again, but the tapping never stopped. Every day it got louder. The patterns grew more complex, faster and urgent. Tess left the house once, just to get away, to think clearly. But the moment she crossed the edge of the property, her skin started to itch. Not from a rash or allergy, from inside. It was like a crawling sensation. Like something wanted her to turn back. So she did. Of course she did. By the end of the week, the wall was breathing. She could see it now, rising and falling like a slow, shallow chest. The wallpaper stained darker each day, the floral pattern disappearing beneath the bloom of something red and wet beneath the surface. One night, Tess pressed her ear to the wall, and this time she could hear a voice. "Let me out." She staggered back, knocked over a lamp. The noise must have startled it, because the wall screamed, a long, low wail like air forced through a rotting throat. That night, Tess took a hammer to the wall. She hit and tore and peeled until the soft parts gave way with a sickening crack. And as soon as she pulled the last bit free, she saw an eye staring back. White, pale, human. It blinked, then it moved. Not just the eye, the whole wall. The entire structure beneath the drywall shifted. A network of nerves and muscle stretched thin, as if the whole house had been growing around someone or something buried deep inside, and it was waking up. Tess didn't scream. She didn't run. She just sat down on the floor, trembling, and listened. The wall around her began to hum, low and warm and familiar. They didn't want to hurt her. They just wanted her to stay. And if you drive by that farmhouse now, or what's left of it, you might notice something strange. The wood grain on the siding seems to shift when you look away. And if you listen carefully, you can hear humming. Most empty houses feel forgotten. This one felt like it was holding its breath. Daniel moved into the duplex at the start of October, just as the trees browned and the sky began its steady descent into grey. The rent was cheap, too cheap, considering the space. There were 2 floors, a basement, and a little garden out back. The landlord was a man in his 70s, who only gave Daniel one warning as he handed over the keys. "Don't knock if you hear footsteps upstairs," he said. "No one lives there anymore." Daniel had left. The man didn't. The upstairs unit had been empty for years, apparently. There should be no furniture and no utilities. The landlord insisted it hadn't been touched since the last tenant left in a hurry, back in '92. Still, Daniel heard footsteps on the second night. Light, measured, pacing footsteps. Like someone walking from one corner of the unit to the other. Then there was silence. He went up to check. Just once. The door of the unit was locked. The lights didn't work. And when he peeked through the dusty mail slot at the bottom, he saw nothing but black. The next day, he called the landlord, but got no answer. After that, he just told himself it was rats, or wood expanding in the cold, or maybe even echoes from the neighbors next door. But as the day passed, the sounds continued, always after midnight, always from above. Sometimes footsteps, sometimes dragging sounds. And on the 7th night, something new happened. He heard a soft knock on his ceiling, directly above the bed. Just 3 knocks. Then it waited, like it wanted him to respond. He didn't. He couldn't sleep after that. Not really. By the 2nd week, things had escalated. His toothpaste kept going missing. The kitchen faucet turned itself on at 3:12 a.m. 3 nights in a row. His cat refused to go upstairs. On the 12th night, he made the mistake of calling out. Hello? He didn't expect an answer, but he got one. A faint voice from the ceiling, muffled and distant. Finally. The landlord returned Daniel's call the next morning. His voice was hoarse. I told you not to talk to it, he said. Daniel tried to laugh it off. It? Look, I'm not scared or anything, but don't say anything else. Don't ask it questions. Don't respond, no matter what it says. Daniel hung up. That night, the voice came back. It was closer now. I can hear you thinking. Daniel started keeping music on all the time. He bought noise-cancelling headphones. Anything to avoid hearing the creaks, the whispers, and the new sound of nails tapping on the ceiling beams. But it found ways around the silence. One night, the radio turned off by itself. Then the scratching began. It wasn't coming from the ceiling now. It came from inside his closet door. Daniel opened it, but there was nothing there, except the distinct smell of dust and warm breath. The next morning, he found a note on his kitchen table, written in block letters on faded paper. Stop ignoring me. He didn't own a typewriter, and the doors were locked. The note itself smelled like mold. Daniel moved out 2 days later. He left everything behind. Furniture, clothes, his phone, even his cat. But when the landlord went to check the unit, it was empty. There was no furniture, no sign of Daniel, no footprints in the dust. Just one new note left on the kitchen table. The note was typed. I hate being alone again. Daniel was never found.